Hey guys, welcome to Taking the Cut. I'm Dr. T, an orthopedic hand surgeon who quit their stable job to try to open a private practice. Today's episode, we're switching it up a little bit. I'm not going to talk about our practice. I'm just going to kind of talk about call, which be a little weird for anyone who's not in the medical practice, but let's talk about call and how it's been working into my daily life and if it's been helpful for the practice. So I guess we are talking about the practice, but not the ups and downs of it. Um, I also apologize. I lost my microphone. Hopefully, I'll find it soon. I'm just using my computer audio, so hopefully this doesn't sound any worse than it usually does. Although I think I have two listeners, so I don't think it'll affect that many people. All right. So call. When you're starting a practice, it's something that kind of all the older doctors tell you will help build your practice. For those who are not in medicine, when you are on call, you're basically you have to be available to take consults or emergencies. So it kind of varies from specialty to specialty. Some have to be in-house or at the hospital at all times. Some can be at home. When you're in residency and you take call, usually as a junior doctor or a younger doctor, you're in the hospital. And then as more senior, you can kind of do it from home and come in as needed. Right now, as an orthopedic hand surgeon, I take at-home call. So when I'm on call, the hospital will call me about any orthopedic issues. Sometimes I can answer it over the phone. Sometimes I have to go in and see the patient, and sometimes I have to do emergent surgery. This is separate from our practice call, where I'm, answering after-hour questions for either myself or my partner's patients. That just kind of comes with practice. This call or this trauma call uh, is optional from my job standpoint. Sometimes when you take an employed job, you have to take it, and call money is kind of baked into your salary. But for me, it's an optional thing. I take general orthopedic call. So if someone comes in, with an ankle fracture or hip fracture, I fix that. And on top of that, I take hand call as well. So any finger injuries or infections, or if someone, chops their finger off, they'll call me. The big advice I was given by, you know, pretty much every senior doctor is that call will build your practice. Call will build your practice. And it's still early on for me, but I don't really know if that's true anymore. Maybe it's location specific. I'm in a big metro area. Maybe that factors into it. But I've talked to some of my colleagues and my old co-residents who work different jobs. Some of them are employed, and they kind of feel the same way. Um, calls, you know, it, it feels like it's something you have to do, and I don't really know like the morality of doing it versus not doing it. I think it was definitely different years ago where you had to do it to be on staff at the hospital, but it's pretty disruptive, and I can't really think of any pros that it's brought to my practice yet. So when I was in my old group, we had to take call, and I didn't make any money off of it. It kind of all went to the senior partners with the idea that I was doing that work to eventually buy into partnership. And I feel like when I was taking call for them and there was, it was all going somewhere else, I was getting called about crazy stuff all the time. Maybe some things that didn't necessarily need to be seen. Um, or I'd be doing these cases late at night and didn't really feel like much was coming out of it. And, this can get a little dicey talking about pay and medicine because there's that weird taboo with it. But now that I'm on my own, um, I do get some money for being available and being on call, and I could potentially make money if I do an emergent surgery for someone. But the past few weeks I've been taking it, I haven't really gotten called that much, which is crazy. It seems like there's a big decrease in volume, and I don't really understand it. Um, Let me rephrase that and say I haven't been called that much for surgical emergencies. I have been called for things that don't really need my input, or don't need to be seen, which is okay. You get the stipend, but not much out of it elsewise. But So that's one thing. I'm not really sure where all that volume went, but it feels like now that I'm a little less busy and I want that volume, just not there. But that's kind of the nature of call. The other thing is building your practice with these patients that you potentially see and operate or see and consult on. The older guys say, you go, you treat them well, you do a good job, they come back to your office, they see you again for another orthopedic issue, they refer their friends. For me, and this is when I really started thinking about it, I don't know how much that will help in the future. And maybe in a longer, like a future podcast, I'll reflect back on this. But um, let's say I take general call, which I do, and I fix someone's hip, and they do well, which has happened. I haven't really seen any future referrals from that. Uh, and maybe it's too early on for me because I'm still a young attending. Maybe I need to do more call and I'll start to understand what these older guys are saying. But on top of that, I fix someone's hip and my subspecialty is hand, and maybe they come back for their other hip, which I could help them somewhat, but I don't. That's not what I specialize in, and that's not what I'm trying to build my clinic around. And some of the older guys will say, "Well, just take whatever you get." But um, orthopedics as a whole is so subspecialized now. It would be silly for someone to come to me for an elective total hip when there's someone who does 500 total hips who I know personally, who I could send them to, and that's what they do day in and day out, and just it's more efficient for them. Like it would be more efficient for me to do an elective hand surgery than one of my older partners. So there's that part. I don't know if doing stuff not related to your specialty on call is helpful. Then the other thing, I take hand call as well. And a lot of hand call for me is pretty bad traumas. So people accidentally cutting their fingers off or really bad infections. Sometimes there's drug use associated with it. Sometimes it's just a bad wound they got, or they have these other health issues. But both of those, and this is not to stereotype patients, but I find a lot of times these infections that I do, um, they don't, it may be like a access to healthcare, but it's hard to get them to follow up. Um, so, you help them out in the moment, but then it's hard to see them again to make sure they're doing well. They kind of disappear, even if you do call and reach out, and sometimes they don't have numbers that you can call. So you lose those people, and then yeah, kind of similar thing. It just doesn't feel like it's building your clinic. So I don't know. Maybe I'm part of the younger generation, and anyone older listening to this will be like, you younger guys don't want to work. You care so much about lifestyle. I like the variety that call brings, but I just don't know how fruitful it is to building a practice. I think that might be something that is just an old saying, and maybe in 2026 is not really true anymore. But who knows? Maybe in 2 years I'll have a booming practice because all these hip fractures I fixed are sending me all their hand relatives. But I don't know. Anyway, short little episode about that. Sorry, it was pretty medically related. I feel like anyone in the non-medical field will not really be as into this one, but it was just something I've been thinking about, and that's really it. So I'll have to look. I think probably in 2 weeks we'll be close to 6 weeks of opening our practice. So maybe another practice update next time. If not, I'll think of something else to just talk about. And that's it for now. If you guys are listening on any of the platforms, like, subscribe, comment, whatever. Um, and we'll see you next time.